Wünschst du dir jemanden, der dich versteht wie kein anderer? Jemand, der deine Wünsche wahr werden lässt und mit dir das schönste Abenteuer deines Lebens erleben möchte? Die Commerce-Plattform Shopify revolutioniert Millionen von Unternehmen weltweit. Mit Shopify richtest du im Nu deinen Online-Shop ein, ganz ohne Programmier- oder Designkenntnisse. Dank der effizienten Einrichtung und intuitiven Social-Media- und Online-Marketplace-Integration kannst du über Instagram, eBay und Co. werben und verkaufen. Neue Zielgruppen zu erreichen war noch nie so einfach. Shopify bietet auf einer einzigen sicheren Plattform alle Tools, um dein Online-Business aufzubauen. Kostenlos testen und dein Business der Welt präsentieren. Shopify.de/try besuchen. Einfach shopify.de/try eingeben und loslegen. Made for Germany. Powered by Shopify. Wusstest du, dass Zehntausende deutsche Unternehmen bereits Shopify nutzen? Von innovativen Start-ups bis hin zu Familienunternehmen mit langer Tradition? Die Commerce-Plattform Shopify revolutioniert Millionen von Unternehmen weltweit. Mit Shopify kannst du Produkte über beliebige Kanäle verkaufen. Ob persönliches POS-System oder umfassende E-Commerce-Plattform. Auch Social Media und Marktplätze wie Facebook, Instagram und eBay werden unterstützt. Dank der ständig wachsenden Auswahl innovativer Funktionen und des zuverlässigen technischen Supports ist es ganz einfach, dein Business mit Shopify aufzubauen. Ob Produktpräsentation oder Bestell- und Zahlungsabwicklung. Shopify bietet alles, was du für die Verwaltung deines Business brauchst. So kannst du dich ganz auf dein Business konzentrieren. Shopify kostenlos ausprobieren und dein Business voranbringen. Shopify.de/try besuchen. Also shopify.de/try. Made for Germany. Powered by Shopify.
The Nigerian Economic Summit Group, in its role as connector, dialogue partner, watchdog, and intervener,
when you first start business, your target is to make your first million.
Seeks to change the narrative and trajectory of the Nigerian economy. Together with our partners, we're not just solving problems, but preventing them, because when advocacy succeeds, the nation transforms for the better. But advocacy is for the strong. It takes fact-based inputs, resilience, partnerships, courage, and a lot of heroes. So be our hero. Subscribe to our channel, listen to our messages, and engage with us. Together, we can transform Nigerian lives, communities, and businesses. Welcome to the NESG Radio. Hello there, and welcome to NESG Radio, a weekly podcast where we dialogue about critical issues and the ideas to resolve them in the national interest. I'm your host, Yinka Inyolakon, and my guest today is Adenike Adeyemi. Adenike Adeyemi is an innovative thought leader with 19 years experience in strategic planning and institutional transformation in the non-profit, private, and public sector space. As the head of Nigeria's foremost enterprise development organization, she leads the fulfillment of Faith Foundation's mission to enable aspiring and emerging Nigerian entrepreneurs start, grow, and scale their businesses. She's also the lead facilitator of the NESG MSME community of practice. Welcome, Adenike. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Yinka. I'm delighted to be here.
We're delighted to have you. It's SME month, on NESG Radio, and we're delighted to have you on the first episode. So we'll go straight to it, As an MSME or as a person, an average Joe that wants to start a business, what are the key questions the person should ask himself? And if the person was asking you, what answers would you give to the person?
Thank you. I think that's a very great question to start. And it's great to see NESG doing MSME month. I think MSME month should happen every month. So for anybody asking what to think of when starting the business, I would like to answer that question by putting the categories of the person asking that question in two buckets, particularly given the context of the current realities of our environment. So number one, they're the type of people who are starting a business just to be able to make ends meet. And this we usually refer to as necessity-driven entrepreneurs. They really just want to get an income immediately to be able to sustain themselves and their families or their other dependents. And so for those type of people, sort of like the key guidelines to think of would be what is that business that I can quickly start and be able to make turnover and profit over immediately. And a lot of those type of businesses will be like trading businesses, so buying and selling. I can get something, sell it at a higher price, and look for it. So really trying to look at the target market, the people that will be interested in the goods that they want to sell, and the quickest and easiest way and the cheapest ways to be able to get those types of goods to be able to sell. The second the second bucket of people would be those who are really intentional about entrepreneurship, and the people for whom we want to have more and more of those type of people. So those are opportunity-driven entrepreneurs. They see a challenge and a gap in the market, and they see a product and or a service that is able to meet that gap and or challenge. They launch it out into the market, take all the risks that are required, and really build a structured business around it that can create jobs, not just for themselves, but also for other people. So for those type of people, for me, the question first of all is this product or this service that you're looking to supply or to provide in the market. Who will need it? Why would they need it? Will they be interested in it? Will they be willing to pay for it? So looking at things around willingness and ability to be able to pay for that product or service. So that's number one, understanding who that product or service is for and why they will be interested in it, and if they would have the capacity to be able to pay for that product and or service. The second thing will be to look at other people in that space who are doing similar products. Now, sometimes that may not be an exact product or an exact service that is exactly comparable with it. It may just be an alternate choice to be able to get that product or service, right? A simple example people always use is looking at things like when people started selling recharge cards in the Nigerian market, and the benchmark competitive product was actually soft drinks. So for those who were going to pay for soft drinks, the money they would use to pay for the soft drink, they would have used to pay for that. So Look at a comparable product or service that may be your competitor, and what is the differentiating factor? What's your unique selling proposition? Why would people pick your product or your service before you? The third thing will be thinking about what would it require me to be able to start and roll off this product or service again. And so you think about first things, what are the regulatory requirements for businesses in particular spaces, like in the health space, in the financial services space, in the education space, businesses that have some form of regulation. The person will not just think of setting up the business, like maybe registering with the Corporate Affairs Commission, but all the other regulatory requirements to be able to produce, sell, and build a business from those products and services. Another example will be those in the agribusiness space, looking to who have products that would require NAFDAC approval or Standards Organizations of Nigeria approval. So look at all the regulatory requirements that it will take you to be able to launch and sell that product or service in the market. And then all the other operating model constraints, requirements of that business. So what is the structure that I need to put in place? How do I develop that product? How do I build a suite of services around these services? Who do I need on my team? What capacity do I have as a person? What are the other capacities that I need? And then look at what if I'm going to roll this thing out on with a minimum of a 6 month, preferably an 18-month timeline. What would that plan be? So develop a startup budget or company launch budget that would take into consideration everything that I'll need for the first 6 to 18 months of running that business from a financial perspective. And once one has done that startup budget, the next question will be, how do I finance that? Do I have some savings? Do I have money? Can I get money from family and friends? Do I apply for a grant? If I apply for a grant, what grants are available to me? Or for some people, can I also even start selling this product immediately? And part of the financing from the business would also come from the sales I make from that project. So just look at the different financing opportunities for that. Now, depending on where that entrepreneur is, a practical question to also think about is, while that business is rolling out, because the startup cost is not just the direct cost of being able to launch and build that business, but also the cost to me as a person. So for somebody who decides to leave employment for somewhere else, and as given that I may not be getting what I was paid before, and I want to start this business, how do I sustain myself? If I have dependencies, how do I sustain that too? So the personal cost of doing the business will be that. The last thing that I would always advise is for that aspiring entrepreneur to set growth benchmarks. So what are the critical factors of success that I know that this product or service that I'm launching is going to do well? How do I define to know that it has product acceptance, to know that it's financially viable, to know whether my marketing strategies are working out, and to know that it's really successful? So really do growth benchmarks. And for me, a lot of the growth benchmarks are really looking at the numbers. So making it regenerate, being able to start selling the product or service, having customers pay for it. So not just showing interest in it, but paying for it, getting to the point where your income and your revenue from the proceeds of the sale of the products or services start to match up to the expenses of being able to run that business or deliver the products and the services, and eventually getting to a point where you break even, and it can take quite a while for a business to break even. But I think the point is that you need to have very clear parameters and KPIs for what does success look like, and then how do I set out milestones to show that growth projections.
Wünschst du dir jemanden, der dich versteht wie kein anderer? Jemand, der deine Wünsche wahr werden lässt und mit dir das schönste Abenteuer deines Lebens erleben möchte? Die Commerce-Plattform Shopify revolutioniert Millionen von Unternehmen weltweit. Mit Shopify richtest du im Nu deinen Online-Shop ein, ganz ohne Programmier- oder Designkenntnisse. Dank der effizienten Einrichtung und intuitiven Social-Media- und Online-Marketplace-Integration kannst du über Instagram, eBay und Co. werben und verkaufen. Neue Zielgruppen zu erreichen war noch nie so einfach. Shopify bietet auf einer einzigen sicheren Plattform alle Tools, um dein Online-Business aufzubauen. Kostenlos testen und dein Business der Welt präsentieren. Shopify.de/try besuchen. Einfach shopify.de/try eingeben und loslegen. Made for Germany. Powered by Shopify. Wusstest du, dass Zehntausende deutsche Unternehmen bereits Shopify nutzen? Von innovativen Startups bis hin zu Familienunternehmen mit langer Tradition? Die Commerce-Plattform Shopify revolutioniert Millionen von Unternehmen weltweit. Mit Shopify kannst du Produkte über beliebige Kanäle verkaufen. Ob persönliches POS-System oder umfassende E-Commerce-Plattform. Auch Social Media und Marktplätze wie Facebook, Instagram und eBay werden unterstützt. Dank der ständig wachsenden Auswahl innovativer Funktionen und des zuverlässigen technischen Supports ist es ganz einfach, dein Business mit Shopify aufzubauen. Ob Produktpräsentation oder Bestell- und Zahlungsabwicklung. Shopify bietet alles, was du für die Verwaltung deines Business brauchst. So kannst du dich ganz auf dein Business konzentrieren. Shopify kostenlos ausprobieren und dein Business voranbringen. Shopify.de/try besuchen. Also shopify.de/try. Made for Germany. Powered by Shopify.
Thank you very much. KPIs are very important, setting the right KPIs and milestones, and patience also, because in the end, the success does not come immediately. So,
Definitely.
Yes, thanks for this profound points. Your bio speaks for itself. Your team has launched accelerator programs reaching 24 states and 180,000 entrepreneurs. Based on your experience, this experience is incredible. You've talked about how, entrepreneurs can, what they should know before starting a business and what they should know at the beginning. But they should also know the barriers, that are ahead of them, especially in a country like Nigeria. So what are the barriers and what are the enablers, for these small and medium scale businesses in Nigeria?
Yes. So for small and medium scale businesses in Nigeria, I would typically like to classify them as micro, small and medium enterprises, which is the standard definition for them. So MSMEs. And they really, for me, are the potential incubators of innovation, economic growth, and employment generation in Nigeria. As at the last MSME survey conducted by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics and the Small and Medium Enterprise Development Agency of Nigeria, we have 41 million micro, small, and medium businesses. Out of that, it's actually 41,543,000. From that 41.5 million, 99% of them are micro enterprises. And the micro enterprise is an enterprise that has a staff count of less than 10 people and is valued at less than 10 million in assets. And the assets have to exclude land and buildings. And what does that tell you? So it tells you that we're a very entrepreneurial environment. A lot of people want to go into entrepreneurship, either because of the environment or even the opportunities that are seen right now. But the first main challenge is that we have a lot of no growth or no growth businesses. And that's 99% of them. Those businesses that are growing businesses that really add the value, the employment, the creation that we want to see are the SMEs, who really are just about 72,000 out of that 41 million. And so the first major challenge is that growth barrier that a lot of MSMEs need to focus on and need to look at. And the second for me would be things around the business environment. So how easy is it to be able to start and launch and grow a business with the required regulatory framework that makes it easier to do? And I have to say that there's been some improvement because of certain things that the current administration has put in place, like the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, which has initiated quite a lot of programs and initiatives to facilitate the ease of doing business, but it is still very, very challenging. And Nigeria still is very poor around being able to start a business. So if you or I want to start a business immediately, in a lot of countries, even some countries in Africa, you can do that within 48 hours online. There have been a lot of improvements, including improvements from the CAMA 2020 Act that has made technology, the introduction of, that has encouraged the introduction of technology to facilitate business registration. But in terms of the implementation of that, it's still very difficult for you to be able to go online as a person and quickly get your business registered in a very short period of time directly from the CAC website. And again, looking at regulatory issues, another main problem is tax. And I know that's one of the things that NESG is working on with NASBA and so many other environments. Because for an MSME in Nigeria, there was a study we did with Deloitte and NASME a few years ago. An MSME in Nigeria is legally required to fulfill taxes of not less than 44 to about 54 taxes in Nigeria across federal, state, and local. And so when people think of taxes, initially, a lot of times people think around maybe company income tax, payee, and all of that. But there's so many taxes at state and local level that anybody running a business is supposed to pay. And quite a lot of those taxes are duplicated, they're ambiguous, nobody knows around it. So as an entrepreneur, part of your challenge around taxes is knowing what tax am I supposed to pay, who am I paying it to, when am I paying it, how am I paying it, and that's a problem for a lot of entrepreneurs who are their own CFOs, their own tax managers, their own accountants to be able to pay with it. And then all the other associated things. So if you're in a regulated industry, again, all those regulatory requirements, which it's still a constraint for larger businesses, but it's more of a constraint again for smaller businesses who don't have legal counsels in-house or cannot afford to pay for one, even when they require it. So the regulatory environment and doing business is often a significant challenge to a lot of entrepreneurs. The third one, which usually is what people say first, is capital. Where do I get financing to be able to fund this idea or even grow this business? One of the challenges of moving businesses from the micro space to the small and medium enterprise space is access to growth capital. FATE has been around for 21 years, and I can definitely say that in the last 3 years, we've probably seen as much funding programs from government, private sector development programs than we've had in the 18 years initially when we were founded. So there are more funding programs, but a lot of this are still very micro-based, very small grant focused programs that are not sustainable funding for people to need. So access to finance, access to capital for a lot of SMEs that don't have collateral, they don't have assets to be able to get a loan, it's a problem. And so one of the things we've spoken about several times is how to use innovative forms of financing that also enable people who want to start and grow a business access finance in different ways and in different models, or even have like technical capacity, because sometimes what they need to finance or what they need to use the finance for can be supported in other different ways. And then the last thing I probably will say is access to talent. So we have so many innovative people who are launching and rolling out business, but we're seeing that the talent gap that we're having in our human capital gap that we're having as a country as a whole is also being impacted by people running businesses. And so that challenge around an entrepreneur, an owner manager who is running the business, being able to have a ready pool of talent that they can work with and grow and build and scale their businesses also typically often remains a challenge. So those are a lot of the challenges that entrepreneurs face that are external to them. But I'd like to talk about one or two other challenges that really are the responsibilities as an entrepreneur and which we've seen quite a lot. The first one is around financial knowledge. Thank you. Financial literacy and financial knowledge. So quite a lot of entrepreneurs usually are challenged with financial literacy. And it's not a surprise because if you look in our education curriculum, most people never really interface with financial literacy most of their lives. And it's not mathematics, you know. The first time I learned anything about a P&L statement was when I'd finished university, because I did a program, I studied a degree in Faculty of Arts. So most people, if you're not doing economics or you're not doing accounting, you're never thought about budgeting, how to develop a budget, how to understand numbers, how to be able to make expenses, income, expenditure calculations, and even things around investment or proper management of money. And so a lot of time, the entrepreneurs do not understand what are the key drivers of their business and don't understand how to be able to make applicable use of the numbers. And the second is the knowledge of running and building a business. So oftentimes, the entrepreneur knows that particular product or service area. So if the person is building a school, they probably are an educator, or they're running a hospital, or they have a medical background. They have that. But the business of running a business, or the business management knowledge required to build that as a business is oftentimes lacking for an entrepreneur. So they may be good in what they're doing or the product or service they're delivering, but being able to think of that venture as a business itself usually is a challenge that quite a lot of entrepreneurs face when they're running and they're building their businesses.
Thank you very much. You mentioned the external factors. You also talked about the ones that concern the entrepreneurs themselves, right? The external factors, are, might be political, environmental, a lot of issues, right? That one has to be solved as a collective, but the personal issues, right, has to be solved by each individual entrepreneur, right? You mentioned that all entrepreneurs need to be financially literate. You also mentioned that they need to learn to run the business, that particular business that they are running properly. So is there any one thing or one place or where they can find this skill or they can learn this skill just so that they can run their businesses better and they can become more financially literate?
Yes, there are quite a lot, but definitely I would like to talk about Faith Foundation and the work we do, which was honestly why we were founded and set up 21 years ago. We're founded by Mr. Foladiola, founder of GT Bank. And the focus really around Faith Foundation, at the time it started, was focused around young entrepreneurs and to be able to create a viable alternative to employability so that young people can see career pathways that you can, if you don't want to consider employability and you have an idea, an innovative idea, and you have a platform that allows you to roll that out. And a lot of the key focus areas we focus on is around, first, we started with those gaps that are within the entrepreneur, just being able to have access to knowledge, tools, networks, and resources to be able to understand how to build and grow your business, but also even to be able to mitigate the risks of operating in our environment. And since then, we've gone on to do a lot of other things that also involve those external things. So how do we aggregate and come together with other partners and stakeholders in the place to de-risk the issues around the operating environment for entrepreneurs to be able to do that. So that's something that we do and we continue to focus on.
Wünschst du dir jemanden, der dich versteht wie kein anderer? Jemand, der deine Wünsche wahr werden lässt und mit dir das schönste Abenteuer deines Lebens erleben möchte? Die Commerce-Plattform Shopify revolutioniert Millionen von Unternehmen weltweit. Mit Shopify richtest du im Nu deinen Online-Shop ein, ganz ohne Programmier- oder Designkenntnisse. Dank der effizienten Einrichtung und intuitiven Social-Media- und Online-Marketplace-Integration kannst du über Instagram, eBay und Co. werben und verkaufen. Neue Zielgruppen zu erreichen war noch nie so einfach. Shopify bietet auf einer einzigen sicheren Plattform alle Tools, um dein Online-Business aufzubauen. Kostenlos testen und dein Business der Welt präsentieren. Shopify.de/try besuchen. Einfach Shopify.de/try eingeben und loslegen. Made for Germany. Powered by Shopify.
Faith Foundation, and we built a pipeline of programs to cover the end-to-end. So whether you're in the idea stage, startup stage, or growth business, you're able to get the knowledge, the mentoring, the advisory, or the support that you need to be able to start through and scale your business. But in addition to that is also that there's so many opportunities now. You know, when we started, we started out as being, one of the number ones to do that. But I can definitely tell you that those who are starting and building businesses now do not lack resources, do not lack access to resources and information to be able to do it. Whether virtually, whether in person, there's so many programs, there's so many initiatives to do that. And so oftentimes our challenge to entrepreneurs is that you are probably inundated with so many information around building your business, particularly entrepreneurs in Nigeria who are in the major states or cities or the commercial centers. You really have those types of programs available. And there really is not an excuse to not find information, whether to improve on your financial literacy or your business management knowledge. What has even happened now is that a lot of that information is now very specialized, and very relevant to sectors and industries that different entrepreneurs are operating in. And I'll give you an example of us at Faith. When we started out, we were sector agnostic for the first 15 years. But now about half of our programs focus on very sector-specific courses or programs, particularly high-growth potential sectors like agribusiness, creatives, health, and all of that. And you'll find that across board. So you're not just going to get knowledge. Your knowledge is now not just available for you to understand and build a business generally, but is now even more available specifically to the sector that you're operating in. And in fact, in some cases, even the value chain that you're operating in. So my challenge really to all the entrepreneurs who are listening, whether aspiring or emerging or current entrepreneurs, is really you need to take advantage of that knowledge, that advantage of all the information, resources available to you to make better business decisions and de-risk your entrepreneurial journey and improve your chances for business growth and survival.
Thank you very much. Guys, you heard it here first. I'm sure you heard it before, but Adenike just reiterated that Faith Foundation helps you to start, grow, and scale your business. Every Nigerian entrepreneur, and you should learn all of these skills and learn about the barriers and also the enabling tools in the environment in the Nigerian space that you can use to grow your business and take it to the top. So let's talk about something else, Adenike, something similar to what you just mentioned, but it's another activity or another initiative you're involved in, and it's the NESG MSME community of practice. How is this community of practice? How does it work? What is it about? And how can MSMEs be encouraged at the grassroots level, particularly for the 99% no growth micro businesses that you mentioned earlier? How can we reach them at the grassroots? Help them learn, help them grow, and help them scale, just so that businesses aren't only growing in major city centers, they're also growing in local areas, and also that wealth will be entrenched into those communities across the nation.
Okay, great. I'm so excited to talk about the MSME Community of Practice by the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. a side joke. My team members will say my first day job is Faith Foundation and the second one is with the MESG. And that really is because of the work that we do with the MSME community of practice. So the micro, small and medium enterprise community of practice by the MESG is a group of stakeholders who play critical roles across different aspects that impact Nigeria's entrepreneurs. It was started, let me say, about 2 years ago, even though the thinking for it was about 3 years ago. And the main basis for when it was started really was on the basis that MSMEs cut across all sectors. So prior to then, if you look at the MESG, it was, I think, probably under the financial services industry line. But we looked and we said, you know what, Nigeria's micro, small, and medium enterprises cut across all sectors. Whether you're saying education, whether you're saying mining, whether you're saying technology, they're there and they're playing very critical roles. MSMEs contribute over 80% of the labor force in Nigeria and almost about 50% of the GDP. So that is major. And if they're that critical to our socioeconomic growth and development, we need to take a focused look and attention to it. And so the MESG made the strategic decision to develop a community of practice that brings together key stakeholders across government, private sector, non-profit, development space to aggregate and discuss key policy issues that pertain to MSMEs in a concerted manner. Because we have a lot of these conversations that happen across the board, but realizing the strength of the MESG in being that private sector think tank organization that also engages with the government on economic matters, it was important for us to say, okay, let's also bring all these conversations holistically, aggregate them, and also speak at one. And so the four thematic areas that the MSME community of practice looks at are the four major areas that we brainstormed when the community of practice was founded. And we agreed were the critical areas to move the needle and really make significant progress and impact for MSMEs. And those are things around doing the business, number one, doing business environment, improving the business environment for MSMEs, number one. Number two is around access to finance. Number three is around capacity building and training and support. And number four is around access to market. And those really are the four areas that we identified. And I keep saying we because we is not me. It's a lot of people who are made up of trade groups, business membership organizations. We have members from the largest MSME association and umbrella body in the country, which is the Nigerian Association of Small and Medium Enterprises. We have chambers of commerce represented, and we have a lot of development partners, non-profits, civil society organizations, and private sector individuals who are focused on supporting MSMEs in Nigeria. And what we've done in the last 12 months is really to agree on each of those thematic areas. First of all, what are the critical gaps from a policy perspective that we see that is challenging MSMEs, but also looking at programs that also exist, particularly from the government level, because we didn't want to have those conversations going in blindly without already understanding existing programs and initiatives that are already in place, and so that we can also work and support and sort of collaborate and provide very structured guidance in that. And over the next 12 months, we're working on a very ambitious plan around each of those groups. So each of those thematic groups also have thematic group leads who are also going to work in ensuring the achievement of the objectives and the goals and the KPIs that we've set for that. So it's quite a lot of work, as you can imagine, but it's much needed and much required work. And one of the things we're very happy again is that aggregation of different interests and different perspectives. Because the micro, small, and medium enterprise group in Nigeria is also very diverse, and diversity is not just in terms of sectors, but in terms of geographic dynamics, value chain dynamics, business type dynamics, And so those things are for us very critical. And also to support and engage government effectively as required when they're making key programs and plans and policies. So an example now is that one of the things government announced about a few weeks ago is a review of the reclassification of how micro, small, and medium enterprises in Nigeria are classified. Part of the challenge that stakeholders have had before in classification is that if you look at that micro enterprise segment, it covers anybody who is just a one-person business, or it covers micro businesses who are running very small table businesses, so to speak,
right,
or to somebody that is employing about 9 people, with that. So that's such a wide range, which can also create problems when you're trying to review and assess policies and programs that can affect them, because you're putting quite a lot of people in that bucket, and you're putting formal businesses, and all of that. So one of the things they're doing is reclassification, and part of what the work of the committee doing is supporting and engaging on that reclassification process, taking into consideration all the key feedback from all the stakeholders present, so that we also present a review classification that takes into consideration not just the dynamics that we have in the current environment as it is, but really where we should be moving our entrepreneurial ecosystem to be for Nigeria, to fit the kind of future projections or growth targets that the country has as a whole. So for those who are listening to this podcast and who are not members of the MSME Committee of Practice, but you represent various stakeholder groups within the enterprise space, or you have a passion for those who are in the MSMEs, please, we encourage you to please join us. We really would like as many people as can to join us on this journey and this work that we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. The link to join us is nestgroup.org/PC, and you would find out all the information that is required to join the NESG MSME Community of Practice. Thank you very much, Adenike. On a lighter note, what has been your most fascinating experience, right? The most rib-cracking experience working with entrepreneurs?
Honestly, I've probably been working for about 20 years.
Wünschst du dir jemanden, der dich versteht wie kein anderer? Jemand, der deine Wünsche wahr werden lässt und mit dir das schönste Abenteuer deines Lebens erleben möchte? Die Commerce-Plattform Shopify revolutioniert Millionen von Unternehmen weltweit. Mit Shopify richtest du im Nu deinen Online-Shop ein, ganz ohne Programmier- oder Designkenntnisse. Dank der effizienten Einrichtung und intuitiven Social-Media- und Online-Marketplace-Integration kannst du über Instagram, eBay und Co. werben und verkaufen. Neue Zielgruppen zu erreichen war noch nie so einfach. Shopify bietet auf einer einzigen sicheren Plattform alle Tools, um dein Online-Business aufzubauen. Kostenlos testen und dein Business der Welt präsentieren. Shopify.de/try besuchen. Einfach shopify.de/try eingeben und loslegen. Made for Germany. Powered by Shopify.
And I have to tell you that my last 6 years, which have been the time that I've spent at Faith Foundation, has been the most fulfilling. And I'll tell you why. Every day, or almost every day, I get to meet and interacting with people who are not just creating products and services that are really meeting a need, solving a problem for a group of people or individuals and all of that, but who are really putting in time, effort, and energy to build a sustainable business in Nigeria, because it is hard. And you see the persistence, the resilience, the diligence, the tenacity. And so, if anything, our entrepreneurial community at Faith Foundation is really the inspiration that I get for my business. I can tell you that when for my entrepreneurial community at Faith Foundation is really the inspiration for me that I get to do this work that I do every day, and not just for myself, but for my team as a whole. I can tell you that whenever I feel discouraged about our operating environment, I just need to visit people who are building businesses and creating employment. And that inspiration from them really it just filters across board. And I'll give you one example. Last year was the most challenging year for a lot of Nigerians, and definitely for entrepreneurs. And quite a lot of our entrepreneurs had to shut down their businesses when the lockdown started. And then even when the lockdown was eased, just even that progress of trying to just get back your customers, trying to produce your products and services and regenerate income and pay salaries also. So quite a lot of our entrepreneurs, I remember that consistently between April, May, and June, the calls I was having from a lot of our entrepreneurs was, Adenike, how am I going to pay salaries? I cannot ask this person not to come to work. Even if I ask them not to come to work, this salaries pays their children's school fees. It pays their rent. It's paying for this person's mother's health. How do I do that? And just that focus on their people, that it's not just easy to tell people to go and you're not going to pay for them. Livelihoods are dependent on this business. So I have no reason but to continue in that business. Those are the people who have Nigeria on their backs, and that for me is one. And then one of our entrepreneurs that was challenged by COVID and the lockdown got a double whammy because during the NSAS protest in October, two of her shops, and one of the shops is a double shop, was vandalized. And when I say one of them was completely everything, even light bulb fixtures were taken off the shop. When we went to visit her a week after, do you know what this person was doing? She was galvanizing all the other fellow entrepreneurs within the space because she was in a shopping mall location where similar things had happened. And she had just come up and said, okay, well, this is the situation. What do we do? How do we prevent this from happening again? How do we get the mall managers to really put in the initiatives in place? What are the security? And guess what she was even doing? There were 2 or 3 of the other businesses. She was like, clean up, just inspiring them and saying, what has happened? How can we get you to clean up? Can we get cleaners? Can we get this? And then, so when we kept asking, what can we do? They already had a long list of things. And she was like, we need this. We need people that can help us with cleaning up. We need people that can come and put security proofing into place. We need, if you have people who are in the security space that have a knowledge of where some of our goods were carted out and we can retrieve them again, do that. So just even that leadership in the face of adversity that came up even at that time, that for me was really quite astounding and outstanding, and so that's the joy that I get to do the work that I do, is that even despite the odds and the challenges of the environment, people are still building, people are still employing, people are still producing, they're still delivering services, they're still doing their own part, and all of this helps to keep the economy going one way or the other, and that really is what inspires me and makes me very happy.
The role of building our nation, it would not happen, with large corporations. It will happen with small businesses who are creating value, in across the country. And that brings me to the final question. It is, how then can we create this value consistently, right? That it's not only that lady, but that we find leaders across communities, to create value and in turn create employment and solve local problems across our communities.
So that honestly is, and there's no better person to have this conversation with than the NESG. And that is why the environment really has to be easy to be able to generate ideas. Nigerians are one of the most entrepreneurial people in the world. Sometimes I go for programs where you have other people doing similar things that we do, and they're trying to get their people to be entrepreneurial. The first time I heard it, I found it quite hard to believe, because in Nigeria, you don't have that. People see a problem immediately and they think of different ideas. When Faith Foundation started, for the first 10 to 15 years, you had to have finished tertiary education before you took any of our programs. And then we noticed about 5 years ago that half of the people that were in a lot of our startup programs had already started their businesses by second year or third year, and a number of them were already employing people by the time they were graduating from their colleges, universities, polytechnics, or wherever they graduated from. And so we realized that entrepreneurship was really happening way earlier, and we had to get with the times and even bring that earlier. And so what that is telling you is that, and we have a very young, dynamic population We talk about unemployment and underemployment, and the figures from the last quarter are really disheartening. But you know what? We need to be able to ensure that in whatever spaces we play, we need to move toward making it easier to start, build, and grow businesses in Nigeria, because the market will take care of all of that. I am very much for regulation, but not regulation that stifles. Regulation has to make it easy for people to come into a space and people to be able to build innovative ideas with that. So look at key segments like young people, key segments like women-led businesses who are creating some of the most socially innovative and impact products and services that we're seeing, particularly across critical sectors like agribusiness, health, and education. How do we ensure that we're helping women-led businesses stay in business? Another statistic that I'll share with you, according to the last survey by Snedden and NBS, is that women make up about 44.5% of micro-enterprise-led businesses, but only 22% of SMEs. So yes, we have women running businesses, but very few women, less than a quarter, in growth businesses. So being able to ensure not only that policies, programs, and initiatives help people to start, because people will start, but helping people to grow and create sustainable businesses that can generate full-time part-time employment is very important, and more than ever. I've seen so many innovative ideas from a lot of entrepreneurs I face, and sometimes not enabling someone to start a business can be a matter of life and death for another person, because that person can create a product or service that can solve a critical life or death issue for communities and groups of people. So it's not just from an economic growth perspective. And so I encourage everyone, private sector, public sector, development sector, individuals. One of the simple things that sometimes we meet people who say, I'm just an individual, I'm doing my work, how can I support SMEs? And say, give your knowledge, give your time. You have knowledge that is so critical. Volunteer to teach, volunteer to mentor, volunteer to advise. You may have worked in a procurement function for 20 years. What you know can be very critical for somebody who has a very strong inventory aspect to their business, right? So no knowledge is too small or too limited not to be able to add value to entrepreneurs. So volunteer your time at so many of the entrepreneurial development programs that you see as individuals. As institutions, private sector-led institutions, look within your space or within your sectors. How can you help to improve access to market for groups of SMEs, around you? Sometimes part of the challenges for SMEs, MSMEs, when they try to access market is that the standards or the level of their product are not as good or to the right point that it is. Or the standards and quality can be good, but the volume is not large enough. So one of the things we speak to a lot of private sector people, and we're seeing quite a lot of them that are doing that, is they're bringing SMEs together in groups and providing capacity building training and knowledge to help them see ways in which they can improve the standard and quality of the product to be able to now access larger supply chain, or bringing them together, or recognizing associations, that can provide that. For those who are in the financial services or access to finance programs, I always ask, please be innovative. I actually don't expect banks to be giving money for free. I'm one of the first people that will tell you that a bank is there to run a sustainable business and they have responsibility to shareholders, and they can't be giving money for free. But there's also this large market of large market that can be potential services to people. So are there ways in which you can work with the government to ensure the full implementation of things like the movable collateral registry that allows SMEs to be able to now access capital, but you also have a way of de-risking because you have access to collateral, or even things around data and or digital technology, where we need to really move the needle around credit scores. And I have a credit score for the US. If I need to take a business loan, if I register a business in the US and need to take a business loan, they just need to look at my credit score. So how can we also make it easier, right, from the supply and demand level with things like the credit score? Again, digital and financial inclusion is also critical to a lot of micro and small medium enterprises to also supporting them. So for those of us that are doing things like that in this space, we also should remember. And then for those in the policy and the government space or development sector space, how are we being clear and being consistent around two things? Ensuring that we have policies that really continue to support and enable the growth of MSMEs, But more importantly, how are we learning? And that's really what I want to end with. There's not a dearth of programs or initiatives or even funding that's available to micro, small, and medium enterprises, but we're not learning from them. There's so many funding programs that were launched last year. What is even the traction from a transparency and accountability point of view? Where were those funds disbursed to? Who were they disbursed? And when I say we, may not be names like Adenike, Yinka, but in terms of demographics. So what kind of demographics groups reached out, applied, and were disbursed? What can we learn from them? And how do we apply that learning to future program design? And that really, for me, is where the gap is missing. There's so many large programs that have data and information, but there's not that intentionality to learning from what has worked, why it's working, what has not worked, why it didn't work, and how do we apply that in future programs that we run and implement. So those are the areas and things that, for me, I think are very important for supporting businesses. Last view is also educational curriculum and making entrepreneurship in educational curriculum from the secondary school level, but in a practical way. For me, I don't even think we should have entrepreneurship as a subject. I think putting it as a subject makes it very theoretical. I finished from University of Ibadan with a Bachelor of Arts in Linguistics. And I always say that nobody ever told me that I could run this linguistics as a business. So who knows, I may have a linguistics practice now because I've never been taught to do that. And like we see in a lot of leading curriculums across board, I think every program that people from senior secondary school education to university or to tertiary levels, whether you're in a college of education, University of Science and Technology, or Polytechnic, or General University, every course you're reading should have some entrepreneurship aspect of it. So it's allowing you to broaden your thinking about the opportunities available for that course, that program or degree. And that's really how we create value-added entrepreneurs on that journey, so that whatever path that person decides to take, they have the basic fundamentals to be able to build and grow their businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Adenike. I'm going to add one more question quickly. My question to you is that over the years, we seem to have turned away from vocational and technical knowledge, right? And it seems to show these days because a lot of skilled personnel, like you said, we lack a lot of talent, like trained human capital that can fit into, the square pegs and the square holes. How much do we need to scale that up, vocational and technical programs, right, across our communities? Entrepreneurship can be entrenched into what they are taught, just so that after they get that training, they can go ahead and create businesses that they can leverage their skills to provide for their family and to grow their communities.
So this is another topic that I'm passionate about. In fact, before my first committee in MESG was actually with the Human Capital Development Policy Commission. And one of the things we spoke about under the education was around the technical, vocational, and TVET, technical, vocational, education and training, right. Which now falls under like STEM, the STEM space. And for me, I think that that's one of the critical deficiencies that we have as a country. And so I'll say a few things. First of all, this is something that is very personal to me. My dad is about 88 years now. He never went to university. He never went to like what we call formal university here. My dad did City and Guilds, right? And City and Guilds was and still is one of the highest levels of accreditation for a lot of technical vocations at the time. It's right. Not as pervasive as we don't have it as wide as we used to then. But with that, he studied electrical engineering and rose to really a fulfilling career for him before he retired. But now when we think of technology and vocation, there is even the perception and the image around it. And I think that the first thing we have to do is we have to bring in that value, that perception, even to technical vocational education and training. And it has to be valued, because I see now that there's now that thing around, STEM is fancy, nice, if you're doing technology, and engineering and math, but there's still the TVET, the technical vocational education training, and we need to be able to bring prominence again to it. And that includes not just instituting it in the curriculum or making sure that there are standard schools that meet international accreditation standards for that, but that also even in terms of public relations, public communications, media around it, you need to make it so that when somebody wants to apply, they go there. And if you think about even Polytechnic, I always say that a lot of people that go to Polytechnic now, I remember then, it was like a second-class thing. You tried university, you didn't get to university.
It didn't work out.
And then you go to Polytechnic. And in fact, the worst one was colleges of education because they tried everything else. It didn't work out. And the College of Education was their last option. So even in terms of the revamping of the educational curriculum, we see that this touches on different aspects and different elements. There was a study that Dalberg did for the Office of the Vice President about 2-3 years ago around job creation. And one of the things they talked about was, I think they labeled them as economic transformers and mass job creators, and you find out that whether it's in agriculture, it's there. Because part of the thing we want to talk about, sustainable farming, is a lot of mechanization. Do you understand? Moving it away from smallholder. Not that smallholder farms are important, but
but creating value with it, right?
Creating significant value and all of that. There's a lot of technological aspect. If I look at a lot of our agribusinesses in faith, part of the challenge is that technological aspect for growth. They want to produce things on a larger scale, so they don't have the money to buy machines from Spain or Italy or China, but they want to have like a mid-scale factory. But there's no agri-tech engineering student who is helping them innovate or think about. And that applies across all the sectors that you can think of. So it is and should be a priority. And for me, it's from senior secondary school that starts. And we can look at benchmark countries like India, like China. That investment is there. And that's why if you look at a lot of people that manufacture stuff that require a lot of this skill, where are we finding their technicians from, right? And that's where we're not finding them from Nigeria because they can't treat it there. We're finding them from certain locations that have invested in that. And most of these technicians do not have university degrees, but they have the degrees that give them prominent practical knowledge and application in that. Let any people that look down on masonry or carpenters or plumbers, if you travel abroad, have a plumbing issue and call a plumber. They will charge you $100 first at a minimum, if you're lucky, to even assess the problem before you do that. So that value really has to be put down there. The curriculum has to be made practical and relevant. And frankly, in my opinion, give them to the schools that can focus on it rather than just putting it at just regular university levels with it. And we have to take it seriously because we're already backward as a country without investing in that. And even when we talk about technology, I like to talk about technology from a wholesome perspective. Yes, there is the software aspect of the technology, but our effort and that path towards industrialization can only happen when we think through that hardware part of it. And we see it, whether a bad roads, bad buildings, and everything around us, it's there. So the opportunities are there, but the gap is really wide. And that can make so much inroads even in entrepreneurship. A lot of my entrepreneurs complain about just those type of low skills. Low skills, low value opportunities that are really not available, and they're significantly getting worse as we see them.
Thank you very much. I feel like we should have, a whole month to discuss technical and vocational, education, non-formal education, and a lot of these things that make it popular because in the end, it's a way that we can create jobs en masse and give people skills that they can use throughout their lifetime. So thank you very much for the conversation today. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to Adenike Adeyemi, Executive Director at Faith Foundation and Lead Facilitator at the NESG MSME Community of Practice. Thank you, Adenike, for joining us today on NESG Radio.
Thank you for having me.
MSME Week continues next week. Join us for another insightful episode. Visit www.nesgroup.org/podcast to subscribe to our channel. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to our content today. Remember to subscribe to the NESG Radio. Follow us across all social media channels and visit our website www.nesgroup.org/NESG Radio. NESG, in the national interest.